Chief Seco, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today. I really appreciate it. It's a great honor for the Oral History Program to be able to speak with you.
Thank you. Shonavish.
Could you tell me what brings you to the conference?
What brings us to the conference as a representative of my people is to reunite the families that were once called Black Indians, and to also tell the history and story of our people that has been lost or forgotten about.
Chief Seco, now when you say Black Indians, many people outside of this conference perhaps would not be familiar with that conference. They'll say, well, Black and the Indian are kind of separate. Can you explain what the term means, Black Indians?
Black Indian is a misnomer. The word black, as far as we're concerned, one drop of Native blood unites us all, but we've always identified ourselves as we the people, Native American Indians, for the terminology of the United States and what they use. Black Indian, though, is just I think it gives a pictorial or a picture in the mind's eye of what type of Indian, because there are historically been proven separation between different Indian tribes and skin tone and color. I think it allows us to identify which particular Native American tribe or identify the Indian that you're talking about as a whole. Most people use red man as synonymous, or red Indian as synonymous as a term, but it's not looked at any way other than being Indian or American. So black identifies the dark-skinned Creeks or Muskogee that we were once called.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the Creeks and Muskogee were people who, can you talk a little bit about that history, because they were people who were very prominent in what's now the eastern part of the United States?
Well, yes, before actually the Creek word came into existence, which was created, there was Muskogee or Muskogee, as you may have heard. Mm-hmm. Outside of that was Wali. My particular tribe was Yamasi. Yamasi was considered and is considered in the Industrial Commission, which is a congressional set, as being described factually as, for lack of a better word, African or Negro. Mm-hmm. We were one of the only tribes that were labeled that way, but were a part of the Muskogee Confederacy. Mm-hmm. History has proven, though, that we had a very large empire ourselves, being the only tribe that had upper and lower Yamasi. And within that, a lot of tribes you might have heard were a part of that confederation called Muskogee, which was actually Yamasi, which is the Hitchiti, the Appalachee, the Oconee, the Salkehatchee, those different tribes, the Hupspa, all those were different villages and tribes under, quote, the Muskogee bloodline, but were actually Yamasi people and citizens or tribal members.
I see. Now, in the history books, the only citation I've seen about the Yamasi people, and you have to excuse my ignorance, mm-hmm. is there was a Yamasi War that took place. Is that the same? Were your people involved in that?
Yes, my people were involved in that. You're talking about the Yamasi War of 1715,
right?
And what happened in that transpiring aspect of it. Historical facts was that we had been working and dealing with the Spaniards for quite some time. We actually interacted with a lot of the colonists that came here, the French, the Scots, the Spaniards, and the British colonies, or colonials. And what happened basically was that there was a miscommunication and unfair trading practices, which led up to the War of Yamasee, or the Yamasee War of 1715. But what history does not also say, it wasn't not just the unfair trading practices, but it was also the raping of our women, mm-hmm. the taking advantage of the children, the killing of men, that also sparked this. And we had a prior war to that, which was the war with the Tuscaroras, that we assisted the Tuscarora for the same type of situation. So that's what led up to the War of Yamasee, the War of 1715. Mm-hmm. Contradictive to what history is teaching, we continued to fight, though it never stopped. It is the continuation that you hear of in history with the Seminoles. Mm-hmm. The word Seminole, which is being deprived as runaway, was in reference to, in our historical documents, as running away from that war that continued on with the Yamasi, which started firstly with the Yamasi. So that's where the term Seminole comes from. Also, through history, they talk about a lot of black Seminoles. Well, the mm-hmm. black Seminoles they were talking about and referencing, history shows, were Yamasi, because mm-hmm. we last were located in northern Florida, which is where my family's from.
Okay, and that was my next question, Chief Seco, was that what's the relationship between the Yamasi and the Black Seminole? But in a sense, you're saying that there is a very tight relationship. It's just a continuation.
Yes, that's right, and exactly. Even when you look at the name or the tribe now in Miami, Miccosukee, mm-hmm.
when
you look at the actual derivative of it, it was actually Miccosukee, which is our name for chief in Hitchiti. Mm-hmm. The Miccosukee speaks a very close derivative of the Yamasic language that they called Hitchiti. So that's the tie-in, and you'll see that within their historical documents. If you go down and visit the Seminole Reservation, and you'll see the pictures of the old or black Seminoles. Predominantly all the pictures there are of black or dark-skinned Seminole women or Miccosukee women. If you look up the historical archive with Billy Bowlegs and the rest of those, you see that they were pretty dark. You know, they were black if you would consider them such, based on what their ancestors look like today. So.
And Chief Seco, when you were growing up, how much of this history was taught to you, and how was it taught to you? In other words, how did you learn? Because most people cannot go back to 1715 and whatever heritage they're from. How did you learn this? Who are your elders who taught you?
Well, my matriarchs in our family, the matriarchs keep the story, the hidden story. The men were more worker or hunter-gatherers and such. So the story was passed down just by word of mouth from the women to the men or to the children as old folklore, and also stories of how we came to be, why we had to move from different areas. Growing up, you know, we knew that we were originally from certain areas in either Florida or South Carolina, and it comes to be, you know, a story given to the women in just a very gradual way. While we're also taught customs and traditions, you know, things that the average person might overlook. You know, an example would be maybe your mother, certain practices, how she cooked dinners, certain what you call religious beliefs about, you know, someone walking in the house, or you know, cayenne pepper being hung at the door, things of that nature, which was tribal for us. But for the most part, the tradition was passed on through our grandmothers and great-grandmothers. Myself particularly, it was talked about as far as the history of our people, why we came to Tampa, and how that all coexisted. My family also on my father's side, which is the Jones, we're related to Sam Jones, which is called Abiaka or